Hey guys, Buckeye Bar Guys. We wanted to thank you guys for tuning in to us here on Buckeye Bar Talk. Great show we got coming up today. We're really looking forward to you guys listening and watching it. But just wanted to remind everybody, just remember to subscribe to the channel, hit the all notifications bell, and that way, anytime a new show comes up, you guys will be alerted to it. And don't forget to like the video and comment on the video. All interactions with us helps us continue to grow, and we appreciate your support. Now to the show. Welcome back, everybody, to Buckeye Bar Guys here on Buckeye Bar Talk. I'm Mike.
And I'm John.
Tonight's day is November 20th, 2023, Monday night. First show of the week. We're going to do two this week, obviously, because we got a big one coming up here on Saturday. So tonight we're going to just quickly go through our thoughts with the Minnesota game, put a nice little bow tie on that one, and call that a week. And then we will actually talk a little bit later after that, just some of our initial thoughts going into the Michigan game. And then obviously we'll do a bigger Michigan show on Friday. So it's the big week, and it's, it always seems like, we get outside the years, like the couple years that we get Penn State, it's like we get a kind of a nobody always the week before this one, and you always the same thing. You always kind of just wanted to get it over with. It's like they kick off, and then you wish you could just hit a fast forward button. So, I mean, McCord, they had a good first drive. Then McCord kind of struggled a little bit through the rest of the half. They moved really well. I thought, pretty much 20 to 20s, kind of sputtered out a little bit in the, the red zone. But it is what it is. They looked pretty good at the end of the night against Minnesota. I mean, again, if it wasn't for a big legged kicker, they would have had a shutout for the second week in a row. I mean, that was
what is that crap with 50+ yard field goals, man?
Yeah, so I'm glad the defense is definitely coming into some of their best ball. Still quite very impressed the way Trey's been running. I mean, those jump cuts. I mean, God, if he's got that going for the Michigan game, see, that's when I like when he's shifty. We always complain at times he's a little too shifty behind the line of scrimmage. When he hits his hole, and then he can start, and then he finds his spots by juking people and stuff like that. I love seeing that. And outside of that, the offense was pretty efficient. I mean, Ryan Day, he looked like a ghost had taken his soul. After going into halftime, probably thinking of like, what the hell did I just do, lining up for a pass that wasn't really needed, and held your breath that McCord might have just went down with an
injury. Yeah, he was visibly distraught. Like he needed to go check on his quarterback. He did not want to be a part of that halftime interview. So. Yeah, you gotta be careful with those calls, Ryan, because that was totally needless. Like, that was as dumb as it gets. So hopefully he learns from that one. I agree with what you say though. McCord had a pretty good game. I mean, he forced a lot of passes. I think he was trying a little too hard to get the passing game going, to be just be hot for the Michigan game coming up. So there's a lot of throws he tried to force. I think he had some communication issues also. I mean, there was one to like Fleming that should have been a touchdown. There was one to Buka that should have been a touchdown. So the Cade one might have been tipped. I'm not sure about that, but that was one over the middle in the end zone that he couldn't fit in there. So he was just trying really hard to make the perfect pass, and it wasn't happening. But what you said about Trey, I mean, the jump cuts, man, that's like the stuff we've been saying that Trey's kind of been missing. I mean, on that first touchdown, totally waits for G. Scott to get into place to be his lead blocker, baits the linebacker into that gap, and then as soon as G appears, he cuts out the other side and gets to the end zone. So, really impressed with that. Looked, really good. Of course, you can't. What can you say about that? First touchdown of the second half. I mean, that was just crazy. He is so fast.
Yeah. No, that was just just a beautiful run. And, it was a nice way to get the half going. And then, in typical Ohio State fashion, it's like, then they just like, then they get the quick fumble, and then 2 plays later it's like I mean, that's been kind of a thing for years is like when they get those quick strikes, just they can get so fast on each other just repetitively. And, definitely going to need that, would love to see, a quick barrage like that this week where they can just maybe get a couple scores real fast and really put a lot of pressure on Michigan. But so, you know, again, defense, I mean, you had Tommy out. I mean, but it sounds like, and then everybody's full go. It seems like outside of Ransom going to be full go for this week. Mike Hall confirmed that today at he was at what is it? Giving out food to the needy type thing. So
feed the needy.
Yeah. So he was doing that, and he commented to a couple of the beat reporters that he should be fine. So I mean, not a lot more on Minnesota. Like I said, they looked good.
Defense looked good. You got to play, depth. You got young guys in again.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's been crucial the last 2 weeks that you've been able to do that.
And I like we kind of talked about like what it meant to play some better running teams coming down the stretch before Michigan. I liked how they played against the running. They shut down Minnesota's running game pretty well. Now, and I get it, Michigan's a different beast and all that stuff, but I mean, I was encouraged with that. I thought that they, that was a good showing from the defense, and now it's got to notch it up a few gears for this week.
I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think, Kerry Combs isn't calling the defense. Or Matt Barnes. I don't think they can just put 7, 8 linemen on the field the whole game and just spam run the entire time. Excuse me, come out of there with a win. I mean, I could be wrong because I didn't think that would ever have been possible against Ohio State. So, but I don't see that happening. But yeah, I agree. I was happy with how the defense played against the run. I've been happy with how the defense has played. Jordan Hancock still, every week it's just a revelation of just how good he is, and probably gonna be gone after this year, unfortunately. Cody Simon does great against the run. I mean, him and Steele, they're just kind of like, if you could combine them as one player to have Steele's athleticism and space, but Cody's just discipline against the run.
Yeah.
I mean,
and I think what a lot of people maybe missed a little bit against Michigan State, and even though they didn't run for anything great, but it was like, they got a couple, they broke a couple ones here and there. And Rutgers, the whole second half, you're playing without Proctor and stuff like that. You definitely noticed, it'd be nice if Ransom was back, but you definitely noticed the difference this past week when at least Proctor's in the game and they can do a couple more things with Sonny down in the box. And so like that was noticeable. So again, I think the best part about, last week's game is just that, we all took a big deep breath when McCord was hobbling, but he ends up being fine. And so
that was a nasty hit though. I mean,
they're gonna come in, Memo to Fryer, in a situation like that, you have to take the 10-yard
guy down,
take the 10-yard penalty, tackle the guy. Like, it's fine. Like, we'll live to play another day. Like,
you're right. You kneel out the half and you're done, like.
Yeah, that's the memo to Ryan Day. It's okay there to take the knee. Like, there was, if he would have fumbled it there, I mean, Minnesota could have been scored a touchdown on that, if they would have, if somebody would have been there to pick it up. And
you know what? We can use that to segue into the next game because that's something you can't afford to happen against Michigan. You can't afford taking a sack, fumble, and them scoring there.
Yeah. No. All right, Michigan. So I think we're just, we're not going to spend a lot of time on them tonight because, like I said, we're going to do a longer show later in the week that's just going to specifically on Michigan and, and throw in a couple weekend scores, predictions. So that will be our Friday show.
Mm-hmm.
kind of just want to like kind of gauge our feeling. So this whole year, basically Michigan opened up the year, and granted, the schedule is the schedule, but they looked absolutely unbeatable for, the first 2 months of the season. Nobody could touch this team.
Yeah.
And so towards the end of October, all the cheating allegations comes out. They go kick Michigan State's butt. We kicked Michigan State's butt. I mean,
Right.
Michigan State is that was a name your score game for both teams. I mean, we easily could have scored a lot more in the second half if we really wanted to. I mean, that
Right.
was obvious thing in there. So not really much you can take from that game. But the Purdue game, I'm not going to say they necessarily struggled, but Purdue held their own for a good chunk of that game. And
It was 20-6 for a minute in that game.
Penn State showed very early in that game that they could take on Michigan's offensive line, and they put a lot of pressure on McCarthy. And Michigan ends up the whole second half, because Manny Diaz just wanted the blitz nuts from outside angles. Well, they played smart football and took what they were giving them and just played smash mouth football, up the middle. Kind of similar what they did to Ohio State a couple years ago. It just they didn't get this. They weren't getting the same bang for the bang as they were doing against us or against Penn State last year. But they didn't need to do much more. Penn State's offense. I mean, we saw it. It stinks. And then last week, I mean, Maryland. There was a point early in the game where you thought, well, Ohio or Michigan's going to blow this team right off the field, and they're going to be ready to go for next week. And then it was like Maryland just kept on eating back in the game and getting back in the game. So there's been a little kind of knocks on the armor over the last couple of weeks. They've given up some red zone touchdowns, which they hadn't given up pretty much the whole season up to that point. And now that they've played some teams with maybe some pulse, they don't look anywhere near as unbeatable as they were. And, and then you also got to take in the fact is that they're not getting the same signs that they were getting,
Right.
all the way up to when that all got so some of this, there's been times where Ohio State's been a little iffy in spots this year. I mean, there's been very inconsistent in the offense on a lot of things. So if this game, let's just say if this game would have been played going into the Penn State week, when you would think about what Michigan was looking like and what necessarily we were looking like, I don't know how I'd feel be going in this week, but right now I'm very confident. And I know I'm going to go through the whole weeks of emotions and stuff like
Mhm.
this, but I think there's a couple places on our team where I'm really really nervous, and I think if those places hold up, I like the talent where we have talent compared to where they have talent. And I'm not saying this is going to be a blowout. I don't think this is 2019, 2018 all over again. But I think we can beat them, and we can beat them. I think by 10, 10 plus. I think that we have the edges where it matters, as long as the interior offensive line shows up and plays good against their tackles. And as long as McCord stays within himself,
Yeah.
I think you know, if that happens and McCord's not being very careless with the ball and the offensive line is keeping him fairly clean and they come up with some good scheming of plays to help him out some with some of that stuff, then, you know, I definitely like where our defense is at. I like, but I liked where our defense was at last year going into this game. But in hindsight, I feel a lot better about our corners and safeties this year than I did last year going into the game. And I knew those could be some issues. And I think there's just less chances of issues this year. I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to have as easy pitch and catches as he had on some of those last year.
I mean, JJ McCarthy last year, and I'm not knocking the guy, taking anything away. I mean, it is what it is. He had 270-yard touchdown passes 2 plays in a row or whatever it was, but the one was a simple 7-yard out, that he picked up a blitz. And I mean, it should have been held for a 7-yard gain. And there was a bad missed tackle and it sprung the guy and no one else was able to recover from it. So, I mean, that was a gift. And then the other one was a double move on a safety that was an arm punt and the guy came down and got it. And actually, they had the same exact play against Maryland and JJ missed the throw on it. So, I don't know. I'm not saying it's fool's gold. I think JJ is a good quarterback. I think, he's been struggling though the last month getting to the end zone, which is something in itself. And who knows if what there is to that and what isn't there. But I don't see him. I don't know. I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it wasn't a master class in quarterback last year. And sometimes people stop and think that it was. And I mean, it really wasn't, because after that, I mean, what other passes do you remember him just torching Ohio State on? I mean, I had a couple beverages, so
No,
it's not
I
all.
don't think he did. I think those.
Some of it's kind of fuzzy, but I know we had a couple pass interferences
Yeah.
but they weren't completed passes.
Yeah. No, I definitely, those were pretty much it.
The other one, the fullback threw to the tight end, correct? Wasn't that a trick play?
Yeah, I think so. And, on the other stuff, I mean, and the difference between last year and the year before that is that we primarily, I know a lot of Buckeye fans, and not just Buckeye fans, a lot of people because it's kind of like the same. You get the same thing from the national. Well, Michigan bullied them 2 years in a row. I'm like, Michigan didn't really bully them last year. Ohio State held their own fine against the running game. It's extremely skewed that two bad,
back-to-back plays,
back-to-back plays where they were just being way over aggressive. Basically, had almost everybody in the box, and yay, if you break the first level in a situation like that and you got a couple bad angles being taken, yeah, that's going to the house. I mean, Ohio State's ran plays like that to the house on people before like that. It happens.
Yeah, they were just selling out way too hard to try to stop the run at that point. I mean, Burke was in, they were in man-to-man coverage and cover zero essentially, and they were bringing everyone else that didn't have someone to cover. And I mean, I'm on the play. I mean, Donovan Edwards runs right next to Burke, but Burke's running the opposite way because he's covering a guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, those two runs dramatically skew that whole, I mean,
yeah, all the numbers of the game.
Yeah, they were fine up to that point.
I mean, they did have the first drive of the third quarter?
Yeah, there was a drive where Michigan comes down the field on them and looks very good and stuff like that. But you're going to have those in this. You're going to have that this week. It's going to happen. I mean, it happened against Notre Dame this year. I mean, it's there's going to be a drive or two where Michigan's able to move the ball and go right down the field on them and probably on a good series and stuff like that. It's not to have consistent series like they did in 21, consecutively after another, and they didn't really have that last year. So I like that, and I think now it's just build on it and be a little bit.
And we're better on defense. I mean, facts are we have a better secondary and we have better players on defense.
Yeah,
and their second year in Jim Knowles' scheme.
Yeah. So I think I like where our secondary's at. Even with Ransom out. And I think Knowles is definitely has a much better feel for his players. The players have a much better feel for the defense. And, he's not throwing those crazy blitzes like he did last year, but he's throwing some very impressive blitzes this year. Yes. So I think that's the thing is just, the defensive line. And when they bring extra guys, they need to keep JJ in the pocket and they need to get to him and they need to, make him feel it a little bit. And, and outside of that, like I said, I like where we're at coming into this game. My biggest fears is the interior of the offensive line. I think the outside, between Simmons and Fryer, Simmons has grown on me this year. He's gotten much better.
He's playing a lot better.
He's gotten much better as the year goes. Fryer, he always makes. There's always a one bad one every game. It seems like with him, but Michigan's defensive ends aren't going to pressure him some of the Michigan defensive ends in years past. He's not going up against Aiden Hutchinson this year. So I think that's okay. I think he'll do fine. It's just, Kyle needs to kind of have his head on a swivel for when that one bust is. Fryer's always good for that. He doesn't know how to. You bring an extra guy on that side, and he picks the wrong guy. So
I think Minner's probably gonna go more blitz heavy in this game than what we've seen from him in the past.
I think so too. Like I'm kind of like back and forth. I think he's gonna try to show a lot of different blitzes, but at the same time, I think he's gonna show a lot of looks and pressures and not bring pressures, because I think McCord rushes the ball a little too much, and I think he's going to try to drop into zones and try to confuse McCord. And I think he's going to be like show a big blitz and then drop some guys in that blitz to see if they can confuse him and stuff like that.
And that's why Michigan. I mean, they get a ton of interceptions.
So I'm
get them.
expecting to see some of that. So McCord just needs to be. He needs to get rid of the ball fast, but he needs to also trust his offensive line a little bit. And sometimes this year, when the line has been blocking pretty well for him, he doesn't trust the line and he gets rid of it too fast. And then, you notice that like Julian Fleming was literally open going down the sidelines and would have been 6, or, Ibuka's wide open. Like, so, I'd like to see him pick some of that stuff up a little bit better. But so it really comes down to the offensive line, especially the middle. These defensive tackles, these are for real. This is probably the best, definitely since last year's Georgia game. But you don't have an offensive line like you had last year's Georgia game. So this
might be like the best set of tackles in the country.
Yeah, I mean these are real tackles. I would argue that they probably are the best set of tackles, and I really like them. I definitely think they have a clear advantage on Ohio State there, but I think we have a clear advantage on our defensive ends on their tackles. So, I think that's kind of where we could possibly do some damage, on the other side of it. And so, like I said, I think if those things hold up, I really like our chances. If we get off schedule with some of that stuff, then things get a little nerve-wracking. It's not saying that we would lose the game, but I think that those defensive tackles, if the interior of our offensive line doesn't hold up, those defensive tackles could cause enough problems that would really put McCord back on his feet some. And that's...
Yeah. I mean, I would lose confidence, I think, if early in the game, if like Ohio State went down by more than like 13 points at a time, I would probably lose some confidence then, because I think the moment might be too big and too loud for McCord then.
Yeah. And with this team is that if they get up by you on a couple scores, that's got to be the ultimate goal. You cannot get down by more than a touchdown to them, because
I would say maybe 10.
You just start putting, like, with what they like to do, you just start really putting them into their comfort zone.
Right, exactly.
And
that might force Noel's hand to be a little too aggressive like last year.
Yeah, and they're not going to give a crap if they go win this game 14-10. They are 100% fine with that, and
we should be too.
I'm sure Ryan Day deep down is, but you don't want to be chasing them necessarily. Now, if we get the ball first and we can kind of set the tone and go down early and score, we could put them on some pressure. If we could get them back on their feet a little bit, I would love to see what they kind of look like. They haven't really been challenged, from, trying to come up from behind by a significant behind,
Well, yeah, I think they've only been down 3.
Yeah. So I think if Ohio State could get in a point where they're up 10 and stuff, I really think, they could do some things to them. I mean, I know they got up on them last year, but I think it's obviously with everything else, some of that stuff's not going to be involved this year.
Well, last year, what were they up last year? 7-3?
Yeah, I think so.
And then would have been what, 20-17 going into half, right?
Yeah.
So they were only up 4 early in the game, but yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying, and definitely, I mean, I've said that the last couple of years. That should be Ohio State's goal. You got to get up 2 scores on these guys. 2 touchdowns, and then
Yeah.
you should be good. But it's
Yeah.
not going to be easy.
Yeah.
Now I
No.
did notice though, and you might want to be saving it for Friday, or you might have just forgot. There was a specific unit on the team that you did not mention as something that scares you.
Oh, that scares me too. I like to pretend they don't exist.
Because it's something you feel like special teams shouldn't scare you week to week, but I don't know, man. Like Jaden Ballard's got to field footballs.
Yeah.
It's just something new every week, man. And I mean, you can't live within your 5 against this Michigan team.
No, you can't. They got to try. Well, and that puts pressure on Knowles. He needs to get some 3-and-outs in this game to where they're not kicking it from the 50-ish or around midfield and stuff. It is going to be a field position game. When we're kicking the ball, like, I don't know, every kickoff needs to be touchbacks. Like, I'm sorry. And, hell, punts touchbacks too at this point. Like,
I don't care, right? Like, don't let them field it, but man, we got to be cleaner on special teams.
Jaden Ballard needs to go up and make some catches. And you know what? This might be the game where you have to put a Mecca back there again.
Yeah, just to field them.
Yeah, like
say, you know what? If you don't want to run it, that's fine, but you got to field the punts.
like we need somebody that's got and Ballard, when he's caught him, he's had sure hands. It's just
he must not be sure of himself though.
He just takes. There's been plenty of times where he needs to obviously run up and catch one. And yeah, we cannot let them pin us too many times in this game. We'll get pinned a few times, and that's fine. It happens. We'll probably pin them a couple times. And, but yes, you're right. We cannot be living back there. And this is definitely where, some people on the beat have talked about everybody's nervous about there's going to be a special teams boo-boo that costs us a game. And, yeah, that's probably ultimately the big concern is the special teams unit.
I mean, I'm right with you with concerns.
That would probably be, yes, my 3 concerns. It's special teams is 1, the interior of the offensive line is 2, and I think those are both significant because I think if both of those situations hold up, I think McCord is fine. It's if McCord ends up feeling like that, we just made a bad special teams play and he's got to go chase stuff, or he's getting defensive tackle pressure in his face the whole game, then his issues start coming into a fear,
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm saying going into the game. Yeah, I like where we're at, but be honest with ourselves, those are the concerns, and that's where I think you really have to watch. What real quick, and then we'll get off for tonight. The one thing I really, really love, and especially how he's been playing the last couple of weeks, is that Trey Henderson coming into this game healthy. I think it's going to be a big deal. He was dealing with a lot of the concussion issues 2 years ago. He wasn't himself in that game, and obviously he wasn't there last year. And I mean, you see what that kid looks like being fully healthy. I mean, it's just sad what injuries kind of robbed him of, because he would definitely, there would be no question he'd be the best running back in the conference. And, I mean, he's basically there now with missing a bunch of games, but like he'd be one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the country. Like, that's how good
I agree
he
with
is.
that.
And
yeah.
I think that's, Buckeye fans, I think we just have to realize that injuries sometimes they take their toll on people, and he was one of them. But when you see what he looks like when he's healthy, that he's just a different dude. And I think that could be a difference maker. Last year both Marv and Abuka got over 100 yards, and we still lost the game. This year, if we can get a competent running game with somebody like Trey, and to the point that if he's actually able,
Chip have like 80 yards in that game last year.
Yeah, and then they seemed
that
like
was
they went
weird.
Yeah, and then they kind of went away from him in the second half. I don't know. That was just, it was weird.
Last year got away from him.
Obviously it feels like Dallin's going to play this year. So I like a healthy Trey. Dallin and Chip coming into this game, I like where they could be at. They could really mix it up running the ball, and they're going to do some of those pop passes and different things with the orbit motions and stuff, and to get some of the receivers involved. So I like where they're at. I think they have a lot of different options offensively, and some of that stuff could probably help slow down the defensive tackles a little bit, so they're not necessarily pinning their ears trying to come for McCord. So that's going to be important.
Mm-hmm.
We got to get some sort of running game established, and I think if they do that, and you force Michigan to play with some safeties up in the box, I think then I don't know how they beat us at that point. Like, I really think I like our receiving core against their secondary.
Yeah,
and I think their secondary is good, but I think our receiving core is better.
Oh, if you can set the tone with running the ball to pull them up and hit them with some play actions, then that you still keep those defensive tackles and linebackers at conflict. Yeah, we'll cook them. I mean, and I don't want to sound overly confident because we'll get into this is just a teaser for Michigan. To be continued. We'll get into more what we feel good about, as the week goes on. But yeah, if you're able to set the tone with the run game, this game's over because you're too good on the perimeter that they shouldn't be able to beat you with your receivers.
Yeah. Alrighty. Like we said, it was going to be a fast one tonight, but I think we'll call that a night, and we'll come back later in the week. Before we get off, I hope everybody has a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
I know it's going to be a lot of people are going to have the pit of their stomachs are going to be very nerve-wracking. Mine will too, but enjoy everybody's feast on Thursday. Don't skip over good meals because everybody's stomachs are a little worrisome.
All right. Well, with that being said, thank you everyone for stopping out tonight to the Buckeye Bar. I'm John.
And I'm Mike.
OH.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Buckeye Bar Guys on Buckeye Bar Talk. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that all notifications bell so you see when new content is added, and please remember to like and share so we can grow our audience. Don't be afraid to comment. We want to know what you're thinking, and we want to know what content to add for you guys. OH.